Hi there once again. So great to have you with us here for another edition of Leading Edge. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. Coming up in just a moment, our very own Dan Cummins joins me as we will talk about what will be the 21st year for the Veterans Day Breakfast and Resource Fair at the University of Toledo Savage Arena. But first, I want to get you up to speed on what has been happening downstate with property tax legislation that's working its way through the State House. Take a look. There's House Bill 129. It's known as the School Tax Changes Bill. The bill changes how some school taxes are calculated. Currently, a rule keeps taxes from dropping below a certain amount, but this bill changes the rule. This will affect taxes in many school districts. It passed the Ohio House and is now being considered by the Ohio Senate. Next, there's House Bill 335, known as the Inflation Cap Bill. This bill would limit how much local governments can raise a certain kind of tax called inside millage when property values go up. The bill says this tax cannot go up faster than inflation. And the Ohio House passed the bill, and it now moves on to the Ohio Senate. There's House Bill 186. It's known as the Property Tax Caps Bill. This bill helps people by giving them a credit on their tax bill if their property taxes have gone up faster than the rate of inflation. The credit is for certain school taxes, and that would last for 3 years. The Ohio House passed this one, too. It also now goes on to the Senate. And finally, there's the County Budget Commission Bill, also known as House Bill 309. It gives county budget groups more power to lower property tax collections. It lets them cut levies if they feel the taxes are bringing in too much money. This bill also passed the Ohio House before heading to the Ohio Senate. Now, back to 186 for a minute. That is the one that is drawing the ire of local school superintendents. In fact, they say the bill could take away anywhere between $2 and $3 million from districts over the next 3 years, triggering massive spending cuts. In fact, we were out at an event just about a week or so ago where they drew the media in and talked to us about it. The superintendents say they have been working with local legislators and the public to try to find a solution. So, with that in mind, I reached out to one of the state representatives who is not only a CPA in the State House, but he's also on the Ways and Means Committee responsible for legislation related to taxation and state government revenue. I invited him on to talk dollars and cents and get his take on whether these schools or the taxpayers should have a beef.
All four of those, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all four of those kind of lay out more of a taxpayers are getting screwed mentality. Is that fair?
What I would say is that taxpayers, especially in these 20 mil school districts where there's the 20 mil guarantee, have seen significant increases well over and above the rate of inflation. So I would call it more taxpayer protection is what we're trying to do, making sure that taxpayers can still live in their homes, because we don't want people that say, I have to sell my house, I can't pay my property taxes. Everybody wants to live in their home. We don't want people to go into nursing homes. If you're elderly, we don't want young couples to not be able to afford a home. So I would couch it more as taxpayer protection and mitigating the significant increases that we have seen in property taxes.
What I'm hearing from you is that maybe you believe, or some of the drawers up of these bills don't believe that the school funding formula is broken?
We've worked very diligently on the fair school funding formula, and the state has put in an extra, I think, $1 billion again in this General Assembly to funding local schools. What we've heard from some of these school board associations and others is that the state share has fallen. What's happened is property taxes have increased at such a rapid rate that even with the extra money that the state is putting in, that percentage has decreased. Just this week in committee, we had a school district come in, and they received on a property tax budget in the under $40 million, they received an extra $7 million in property taxes from their homeowners and businesses. And they couldn't answer the question, where did that extra $7 million go? So what we believe is that families can't continue to see their property taxes increase 25, 30, 35% a year. It's untenable. And it's up to the schools to work with the state to make it manageable for families to continue to live in their homes.
Why is there, maybe this is a maybe this is a tough question to answer, but why is there not a one size fits all?
Well, it's really not a tough question. The problem that we have in Ohio is we have 6,000 taxing entities. We have more taxing entities in Ohio possibly than any other state in the country. States that are much, much larger. California has a lot fewer taxing entities. Between townships, villages, cities, counties, health districts, recreation districts, library districts, and then 600 and over 600 school districts, there can't be really a one size fits all. You have some school districts that are very, very small. There's, counties with only 12 or 13,000 people in Ohio. And then you have massive counties like Franklin County, Lucas County, Summit County, Cuyahoga. So there really isn't a one size fits all solution. The Fair School Funding Formula takes a lot of that into account. But from a property tax perspective, it's the fact that there are so many taxing entities when you add in the ADM districts and children's services and the DD boards. And where I'm from, there's a zoo levy, there's Metro Parks levies. And people are just paying too much in property taxes now. And that's why you've seen some folks circulating the petition that I believe has gotten hundreds of thousands of signatures to totally eliminate property taxes in Ohio.
As you're talking there, I'm thinking to myself, when these school report cards come out, why isn't there a grade for stewards of money? Like how the schools are being, it's essentially an audit, right? And looking at them and how well they are spending your dollar. Why doesn't the state of Ohio look at something like that?
That's a very interesting question. I had not thought about that previously. I happen to be the only CPA at the State House, so I look at numbers all the time. But one of the things that I've looked at is the correlation between spending and results. And coincidentally, I don't know if it's still true, but 2 years ago, Steubenville had the lowest student spending compared to their results in the state. In other words, they were the most efficient. That's something that I did personally. What we've seen is that.
Let me stop you there. What did they do so well?
I can't answer that because I'm not from Steubenville, but they get pretty good test results. Their scores, their star index is relatively high, and their spending per pupil is relatively low. I'm sure there's some factors that result in that, but that would be an example of a district that I have looked at a little bit to see, boy, they're doing a really efficient job of educating their students.
I wonder if all of this is playing out around the state like it is here in Northwest Ohio.
Well, it's interesting that you ask that. One of the things we're seeing, especially on House Bill 186, where we're capping those 20 mil increases and offering 1.7 billion in refunds over 3 years, that is much more strongly hitting the rural districts, because it was those rural districts that were at the 20 mil floor. So there's a little bit of rural versus urban. A lot of the urban districts are not necessarily at the 20 mil floor. The advantage for the taxpayers there is, rather than seeing 20, 30, 40, in some cases 50% or more increases in property tax rates, you saw rates at much, much, much less. So there's some rural versus urban relative to what you had just posed. Those things are much, much more local. Some communities are very much involved with economic development, encouraging economic development. I just got off the phone with a councilman from Norton, one of the cities in my district. They were looking at a data center coming in. There was a huge amount of pushback from the local community, and actually they're not going to be doing it now. So a lot of those are local decisions. It would be great if we could see additional regional planning, because that does have tax consequences.
Coming up, so what's the secret to sustainability for our schools? You're going to hear from Representative Romer referencing 2 school districts on the east side of the state that had no other choice than to do what they did. We'll be right back. Welcome back. My conversation with State Representative Bill Romer continues now. He represents an eastern side of the state, a part of the east side of the state, I should say, towns like Richfield, Barberton, and Norton. But he's shaping legislation that impacts Northwest Ohio, too. And I wanted to know if they all down in the State House know how this is impacting us.
I know a couple of these districts, if they don't pass these levies coming up and all of a sudden they see this major change, there's going to be a lot of change when it comes to education. And is that a concern?
It's always a concern because foremost, what we want to do is make sure our children are well educated. I served for 3 years on the Summit Education Service Center Board of Governors, which provides, consolidated services for school districts. After I retired from AT&T, I was director of sales there. I ended up teaching for Revere Schools for 13 years as a substitute, but I could walk in and teach calculus and pre-calculus and stuff. So I've been very, very, very involved in both tutoring and teaching and coaching. So obviously that is the most important thing. But what we want to do is make sure that those tax dollars are being really, really well spent. And it's the example with the school district that came in that received $7 million extra dollars from property taxes. They couldn't give us a cogent idea of what they did with that money. So we want to make sure that the taxpayers are protected, because we're walking really a fine line here between making sure that schools are adequately funded, but making sure that people can stay at home.
Let me stop you there for a second, because I think I want to touch on something that probably a lot of people who watch this are going to be asking as well. So how do you not feed into the narrative that how do you check that the narrative that you're hearing that schools are not spending their money wisely? How does Joe taxpayer go about making sure when he goes to that ballot box that he's voting for what he believes he's voting? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. One of the things we worked on first is transparency. When you would walk in and you would see that based on a certain number of mills, this was the increase per $100 or $1,000 of tax value, we took that away. So now you can make the decision. If I go in there and this is going to cost me $75 per 100,000 and my home is worth 250,000, and let's see, that would be $187.50 is what this levy will cost me if I have a $250,000 home. One, you can make that decision. The other thing is, school board members are probably the most underpaid elected officials in Ohio. They make just a little bit over $100 a meeting and work very, very hard. But go to those school board meetings. The schools have to release 5-year forecasts. So you can look at the numbers behind that. So there's a lot of information out there. Every school district is audited by Keith Faber as the auditor, and his organization also. So it's really up to the taxpayers to do a tiny bit of research to find out that what's being done is really appropriate.
Are schools funded properly in the state of Ohio?
There's always improvements that could be made in the school funding formula. Schools get significant amounts of money from the state, from property taxes, and from others. One of the things we need to look at is consolidation of services. The last school districts, I believe, that merged were in Northeast Ohio. Berea and Mid-Park were massive rivals. Now we have a merged school district that is much more efficient. We need to look at those types of things also. So we need to make sure that there's shared services, that districts merge where at all possible. I know it's a very long-term solution, but the state needs to provide and is providing adequate funding through the Fair School Funding Formula. And we need to make sure that those spikes in property taxes that are occurring are mitigated.
You're talking school buildings or school districts merging?
I am talking school districts merging. We have over 600 schools.
Is that a benefit financially to said school districts?
There's a very significant benefit when you see mergers, because then you have one superintendent, one curriculum director, one transportation director, one food service director. You've got consolidated purchasing. The ability to pick kids up is more efficient because you can modify your bus routes. So there is huge accretive savings when you're able to merge school districts. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened since Berea Mid-Park merged, probably 10 or 15 years ago.
And how long is that? I don't know if you remember that exact situation, that scenario, but how long does it take from the idea to the implementation?
That could take multiple years, um, because they were huge rivals, and there were folks that said, "Nope, I love my high school. I don't want to merge with my biggest rival." But we need to get over that. We need to be as efficient as possible, and we need to get away from the fact that there's 6,000 taxing jurisdictions in Ohio. We need to see consolidation, merger, efficiency of services. And when we're able to do that, we're able to then take the dollars that are corrected and collected and spend them appropriately.
The merger, what does that do to taxpayers?
Well, what the taxpayers would have seen there is they would have seen a reduction in the rate of increase in their property taxes, because now you've got a larger school district that's much more efficient. And I believe that they were able to close some buildings, consolidate students, and anytime you're able to do that, you're going to save money.
Coming up next, Paying It Forward, a tribute to our people in uniform 2 decades in the making. Welcome back here on Leading Edge. The saying goes, freedom is not free. It requires service and sacrifice from so many of the members of our community. And coming up in about a week, we're going to see a tribute play out once again this year to our veterans. Joining me right now is not only WTOL 11 colleague Dan Cummins, sitting next to me, but also retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Chris Zubak, and also retired U.S. Marine Corps Master Sergeant Stephen Kozinski. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Dan, you as well. You have been a part of this event for the last few years, several years.
I'm guessing 8 or 9 years. Steve kind of recruited me in there. Jerry Anderson used to MC the breakfast every year, and he actually called me. I remember when he called me, he said,
Sure.
Hey, I can't do it this year, and actually I'm retiring. Would you mind taking it over? And it's been an honor to do it ever since.
Lay the groundwork for what we are about to play out here in about a week or so. This is a coming together, is it not?
It's a coming together, and it's almost, you could call it a reunion, especially for those of us that have been a part of it for a while. We see the same faces, and we see the joy and the camaraderie just explode once everybody gets a chance to see. So our breakfast is a reason for our service members and our veterans to come together every year.
Yeah, one of the things that sticks out when you hear a lot about the coming together, and you talk about the reunification, but that connection that will always exist, and you try not to lose that, correct?
That's correct. I retired from the Army 2 years ago. The event that I attended last year, as Steve explained, so many people who know one another, who see each other infrequently, on that day, November 11th, come together and instant rapport.
What do you take from it year after year?
It's great to meet a lot of veterans, and a lot of people know it for being on TV. So a lot of the time it's like, I have to go to the stage here. But like, well, I just want to ask you, ask me questions about Channel 11, ask about honor flight, things like that. It's just great to see everyone. Good to renew friendships with Steve every year. I got to give a shout out to Lucas County Veteran Service Commission, who Chris works with. They're the ones that are organizers, but the Red Cross. They're the organizers, and they're the real drive behind this.
So 3 big organizations behind the effort. Volunteers like Steve, kind of an umbrella over everything. The American Red Cross, the University of Toledo's Military Service Center, and the team that I work for, the Veteran Service Commission of Lucas County. We enable it, but it's people like Steve that pull it off.
One of the things that really stuck out for me as I was reading about putting this together, the groups you bring in, but you've got the Rossford High School SOS, a group known as Serving Our Soldiers. It's a club at the school. Obviously, there's an awareness, a need for that awareness right now.
There is, and part of our committee, Kathy McVicker, is a huge part in a direction of the Serving Our Soldiers Club out at Rossford. She keeps them engaged weekly with doing things that all support veterans.
Yeah.
And they'll be there this year. They help assist getting plates for the elderly gentlemen, showing people where to go. blocking things off and say you can't go in there and that type of thing. So they're a real value for us.
But also, I think just in tapping into that generation, the appreciation, one, the awareness, two, just going forward in their life to know how important the men and women in uniform have been to this foundation of this country.
Yeah, they're great. And in fact, they're so great, we gave them an award last year for helping us out.
You've been on honor flights. You just were on your...
Since 2017, I was just on my 22nd.
Yeah. Do you see some of the same faces that you pass at this event as well?
And what's neat to see is when these veterans come for the free breakfast on Veterans Day like this. It's a similar situation with the veterans who start out on our flight in the morning out of Toledo, don't know each other, but yet by the end of the day, everybody's friends. I've been seeing you all day long, whether it's a line at the restroom or a line to get our food during the day or a line to get in this memorial or that memorial, and a lot of raw nerves out there. A lot of veterans from Vietnam War. I have some friends on that wall. And it's an emotional day. But Lord, this video here, this breakfast is just like Honor Flight, where it's a day we can get together and honor all of you out in the crowd, and finally say, thank you and welcome home.
Yeah, we've got about 30 seconds. The resource fair, that's a big cog in this.
It is. It is. This year, we think we're going to have about 40 vendors who want veterans to know that they support them in some way. And so merely for that reason, Veterans One Stop Shop, come out, see all those services that are being provided for you, and decide if you want to take advantage of any of them.
Laid out right in front of them. Let's look at the screen. 21st Annual Veterans Appreciation Breakfast Resource Fair, Tuesday, November 11th from 8 until 11 a.m., Savage Arena, University of Toledo, parking free, breakfast free, and that resource fair open to all veterans and service members. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Dan, thank you.
Good to be here.
Thanks so much.
We'll be back right after this. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, listen, learn, and lead.